This is Matt Maher with a shout out to all you joyful pilgrim warriors. Thank you for listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. And welcome to another edition of The Next Right Thing with Debbie Georgiani and Adam Blai. And this morning, here is today's scenario that we're tackling. Maybe your son or daughter comes home from their first college break and says, I'm leaving the Catholic faith, or I'm leaving the church. What do you say? What would you do? And we are opening up those phone lines today, so if you have a comment or maybe this has actually happened to you, give us a call, 877-757-9424. But to have Debbie and Adam take it away, good morning.
Good morning, Keith, and thank you so much. You set it up perfectly because this scenario actually has happened to so many of us as parents. Just like Keith said, your young adult goes off to college, comes back for the first break and starts questioning the faith, and says, I'm going to leave. I don't need to go to church. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't even know if I believe in God. And I decided I'm not going to call myself Catholic anymore. You know, really, what would you do? And maybe if you face this, you can share the kind of conversations you had with your son or daughter. The number is 877-757-9424. Adam, I'll let you take a stab at it first.
Boy, you know, Deb, this is it's a tough one, but it's a common one. So I don't know, for my part, what I've seen and what I've heard, you know, from priest friends and just living life is it's not unusual, you know, during the 20s when we're individuating from our parents. Like if we step back and look at the big picture, there was this like neat thing that they told us in graduate school when I was studying clinical psych. I have a master's in adult clinical psych. And they said, you know, your 20s are spent figuring out who you are versus what your parents told you to be, right? So we kind of, in our teens, we start individuating from our parents, which is natural. We have to start building, you know, finding our way in the world. And then in our 20s, we really spend that decade figuring out who we are. And then in our 30s, we should have figured that out and we start building that life. And that takes the decade of the 30s. And then from the 40s onward, hopefully we know who we are, we've built a life around that, and now we stably work the rest of our career and build a life. So that's kind of like the biggest picture. Now, you know, on top of that, we have the natural situation that you're in college, you're physically away from home usually for the first time, and you're surrounded by all kinds of people from all walks of life, and you're surrounded by all these new ideas and perspectives. And so not only are you like saying to yourself, consciously, unconsciously, emotionally, you know, who am I? I know what my parents like. I don't know. My parents wanted me to be a lawyer and they always said I should do that. But here I am and that doesn't feel at all interesting to me. So what am I going to do? But you're surrounded by all these ideas. So there's a bit of this that's natural in the 20s. Yeah. However, religion isn't just a philosophy, right? So there's a spiritual reality here. And that's the layer that I think makes this so important, because, you know, if you're really a believer, the stakes are very high. This is a big deal. You know, you want your kids to remain close with Jesus. You want them to retain their perspective of the world based on the truth. And so it can be really scary. Okay.
Well, yeah.
Go ahead.
And I just want to say, yeah, it's interesting what you're saying, Adam, but when you're faced with the scenario where they come home and they express that they're not going to go to mass with the rest of the family, you know, the parents are left in this unusual position where they're like, okay, do I let them decide? When you have smaller ones at home and the whole family is getting up on Sunday morning and going to mass together, or do you require them to still go because they are staying at your home for the break, for the Thanksgiving or Christmas break? What do you do as a parent? I mean, a lot of parents are really stuck in a corner with this, because if they if they say to their older children, just because they're in their 20s, well, this is your time, I guess you get to decide what you're going to do. I can't force you to do anything. Well, then are they setting an example for the younger ones that are still at home? I mean, it's a little bit of a mess, and it's an awkward situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So in the end, and I've run into many, talked with many people that have like called in and, at the diocese and said, and from all over the country, to be honest, not just our diocese. And they're basically like, my kid went away to college and now they're talking about all these things that are really, really contrary to the faith, or they're getting involved in these strange, ideas or spiritual practices. Oh my gosh, what do I do? And basically what you can do is be present, pray, and basically give it time, because you can't force somebody else to think the way you want them to think. In fact, if you push too hard, for some personalities, that could drive them away. Yeah. So, but perseverance in prayer, Deb, I know that sounds like simple to some ears, but honestly, that's what you have. I've met so many mothers that are older that have said, I've been praying for my son, my daughter for 25 years, continuously, daily, some amount of prayer. I'm really concerned, and they persevere.
Right.
And because now here's another piece, Deb, I just wanted to throw in there.
Sure. Yeah.
We do naturally individuate and start figuring out who we are in our 20s. And then we build that life in our 30s. And maybe we're experimenting with something else. But what's really common in your 50s is coming back to your faith.
Exactly. Yeah.
So many people, when it comes time to get married, they want to be married in the church, even if they've been away, because there's just such a traditional feel for that. And then when mortality looms, our minds return to, how am I going to solve this problem of mortality? And we find ourselves helpless in front of it. Yeah. There is no human solution to mortality. And some deep part of us knows that there is a truth there, that God is real, and we start having an intimation that there is a spiritual world. And so it's very common that in the 50s, for people that have drifted away, that they come back to what they know and what they were raised with.
Right. So a couple things I wanted to share, the way my mother handled it when some of my siblings, I never walked away from the faith. Some of my siblings did, and my mother was really great about it. And so was my uncle, who was a priest, and my aunt, who was a Dominican sister. They were wonderful. And it's similar to what you were saying, Adam, and it really helped our family. But before I share that, a couple things I wanted to share with our joyful pilgrim warriors. You heard Matt Maher say, and welcoming all the joyful pilgrim warriors. Well, that's you. If you're listening to Morning Joy today, we consider you part of the family, and we'd love for you to weigh in on this topic. And how did you handle it with your son or daughter when they went off to college and came back a different person? Did you have the certain house rules so that when they were back under your roof, that they had to go to mass with the family? Or did you say, oh, you can sleep in, the rest of us will go to Sunday mass and you can just stay home? What did you do? 877-757-9424. You have plenty of time to call in. We'd love to hear and get some tips and wisdom and tools to work through this, because we're in the summertime and there's so many of our families about to send their kids off to college for the first time, Adam, and so this may happen, and it's very interesting. So back to my mother Connie, my late mother Connie. She was great. She didn't skip a beat. When my siblings decided to sort of walk away, they didn't say they weren't going to be Catholic anymore. They didn't say anything like that. They just said, we don't know if we're going to church, that type of thing. And my mother was so cool about it. She just said, stay close to Jesus, and I'm going to pray for you every single day. Eventually, you will come back to Holy Mother Church. And she just was very clear, and she just went on with her day. She's like, I can't control you. I know I raised you up in the faith. You have a full family around you. I mean, we had an uncle who was a priest that was at our house every single weekend. And we had priests and nuns at our house all the time, just hanging out and just relaxing. I mean, my siblings saw that, but they still chose at a certain point to slightly drift away. Thank God. Every one of my brothers and sisters are all back into the church. And it's a beautiful thing. But my mother didn't even, but I will tell you, I believe that my dad and mom required everyone to go to mass no matter what. If you were in our home, you went to mass. So if you were sleeping in the house, you were occupying a bedroom, you went to mass. And yeah.
So they were both, it sounds like they had a healthy relationship with this issue in terms of, what we can control and what we can't. And
Right.
you leave things to God that you can't control. And that's where prayer comes in. But also, I love that being firm. That just feels like, it's like that older generation of just like very matter of fact, like you're under my roof, you're going to mass. I'm not going to discuss this with you.
Right. Well, and my dad used to always withhold food like breakfast and stuff. And he was like, I'm not paying for breakfast and you're not getting Sunday breakfast unless you go to mass.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that maybe could make some of our parents and even grandparents out there listening just to feel at peace with this, because it is like you said, it's like kind of like a phase that some people have to go through in order to really appreciate the faith. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, I mean, I never left the faith. I got lazy in college, honestly, partly because of grad school. It was just so insane, the hours. But I definitely got lazy for that decade. I never left the faith. But you know what, Deb? When you're born and raised in it, it's easy to take it for granted. You don't know what you have, and you don't fully understand it. Like I went to Catholic school from grade school on, so there was like a lot of basic stuff I got from the nuns, and some catechizing, but you don't appreciate it till later.
That's right. Okay, let's hold it there. Hopefully we'll get some calls. We're going to send it back to Keith. If you'd like to jump in on the conversation, please call us 877-757-9424. Back to you, Keith.
All righty. Thank you so much, Debbie and Adam. And while my this situation for me is about 12 years away, this is helping me prepare. I'm sure there's other parents out there who have young children and are thinking, oh boy, well, I have something to look forward to soon. But this is great. And this is why we love to talk about these types of situations. Every single Monday, what would you do? And speaking of, before we go on the break, the situation that we're talking about is, when your child says they're done with the church, how do you keep the door of faith open without slamming the door on the relationship? That's what we're talking about this Monday. And so if you have any questions or just maybe comments or maybe suggestions, give us a call, 877-757-9424 to join in the conversation. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back right here on The Next Right Thing with Debbie Georgiani and Adam Blai. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Listen to The Spirit World with Debbie Georgiani and Adam Blai.
Demonic activity appears to be on the rise. I'm Debbie Georgiani, and I invite you to join Adam Blai and me this weekend for The Spirit World.
On The Spirit World, we offer a Catholic perspective on angels, demons, and how the spiritual and physical worlds interact.
Saturdays at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern on the Guadalupe Radio Network and other EWTN radio affiliates. Visit grnonline.com/spiritworld.
Psalm 1, verse 1 says, "Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stand in the way of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scorners." What does that mean? Don't hang around with bad people? No. According to G.K. Chesterton, it means something much better than that. He says that there are certain people who, because they are really pure, create a good atmosphere around themselves. They are truly children of light, and that light shines on everything they touch. When a righteous person stakes out a clear position, we recognize that it's something solid and vital and eternal. So it's not that hanging around bad people makes us bad. It's that being righteous can help make the people around us righteous too.
Spend more time with the Apostle of Common Sense. Visit chesterton.org for more information.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. And welcome back to the final segment of this edition of The Next Right Thing with Debbie Georgiani and Adam Blai. And if you're just joining us, today's What Would You Do scenario is this. Your child comes home from college and says, hey, I'm leaving the Catholic faith. What would you do? Yes, the phone lines are open, and you can give us a call. We would love to hear your thoughts. 877-757-9424. But without further ado, Debbie and Adam, take it away.
Thanks so much, Keith. I think that music is so appropriate because I could just imagine that all of us as parents, I know I felt that way, but I could just imagine all parents and grandparents. That's what's in your head, you know, the cartoon bubble over your head, that same feeling of doom, like, oh no, my kid is leaving the faith. But you know, Adam, it's interesting. You made the comment about just growth and maturity and gaining independence and kind of pulling away and being they want to be themselves, right? They want to explore. The interesting thing is, did you know a couple things? Did you know that Catholic radio has helped to bring people back to the faith? It's a beautiful resource for those so they can privately in their cars, at home, on the internet, listen to Catholic radio and be and really get some solid formation, which is a wonderful thing. So a lot of people who have come back to Holy Mother Church have said that Catholic radio has helped tremendously. That's number one. Number two is I just want to also say that I think it was St. Vincent Ferrer said that, we should be at peace as parents and grandparents, that we raised our kids in the faith and we gave them the opportunity to receive the sacraments, and that and to take comfort in that and to trust in God and not feel that's anguish and pain and loss. And I know it's difficult, but to continue to pray for them to come back to the church. The other thing too, real quickly, Adam, I believe Jerry Usher says it this way with his story when he sort of wandered away. Now we all know he's back in seminary for the second time, and God willing, he'll be a priest in a couple years. So that's wonderful. But Jerry Usher said that when he started to wander away, his mother gave him a rosary and said, whatever you do, just don't lose this rosary. And I don't know if Jerry ever prayed the rosary, but he had that rosary, and one day he did pick up the rosary. And you always talk about the power of the Most Holy Rosary. So any more comments on this? I just want to give our parents and grandparents a little sense of peace and confidence in knowing that God's in charge. He sees everything. He knows what we try to do as being good and faithful parents and being the primary catechist for our children. There's not much you can do when they get older. They do have their own minds and independence, and they want to stretch and be themselves the best they can be. And with that, sometimes it does take a different path for a little bit.
Yeah. And Deb, I think one thing to not do definitely is to cut off the relationship or break up the family. Mm-hmm. So, the only place I think it gets really hard, and I've seen this a number of times, is when somebody not only leaves the faith, but is embracing and practicing something that's really contrary to the faith. So like Wicca, basically modern witchcraft has become really popular. And I've talked with a number of parents whose children went away and got involved in that and then would come home for the holidays and they want to do their own ritual before the meal or, in their room and things like that. And so it's not only you're embracing different ideas or dropping these ideas, but now you're coming into the home and you're practicing something that I consider a spiritual danger to, yourself certainly, but possibly to other people. And so it can get hard, but I always, and I'd like your thoughts on this, Deb. I always would say, don't break the family up. Don't break the relationship. Even if somebody's going down, a road that you consider to be dangerous. Like, for instance, if somebody is going down the road of drugs, you don't give up on your kid and walk away and say, okay, you're dead to me, don't ever call again. You do something to try to be helpful, and you stand by ready to help when they want help. So I think with spiritual matters, it's the same. You don't stop loving your children or your family members. But there are points where you have to draw that line, like your mom did, or your father.
Yeah,
right?
mom and dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you, I think that sometimes parents are a little bit afraid that they're going to lose the relationship with their children. And so they will backpedal and do certain things just to make sure that they can keep that relationship. But I think that I think kids down deep do admire when people are strong and have that authority. And the rules. We knew the rules growing up with my mom and dad. My brothers and sisters knew that they weren't going to get away with it. They knew they were going to have to still get up and go to mass on Sunday, even if they didn't want to. They knew it. Or my dad would say, you know what, there's a hotel down the street. You're more than welcome to go stay there. And it wasn't a fight. It wasn't anything, but it was just this, you know what I mean? This very matter of fact way that this was the house rules. And I think sometimes parents get a little bit nervous about showing that strength and authority because they feel that they're going to push their kids away. Now, I would say that I agree with you in the first segment that, you can't really take a Bible and hit them over the head and start guilting them and start, doing all these things that are going to scare them into staying in the faith. I think that is going to push them away even further because they'll go back, like you said, they'll go back to their surroundings on the college campuses and the kids there will tell them, oh, that's just your parents saying this. And, they'll get talked out of it. And so I think you just have to keep a balanced and fair and very honest discussion on this. But move forward as a family, especially if you're a intact family. If you do have a divorce or something of that nature, then it becomes a little bit more difficult, especially if you have one parent saying one thing and another parent saying another thing. That can become difficult. But if the family is intact, I think families should really stand up and have a family meeting and say, no, this is what we're doing in this home. In this home, we are serving the Lord. We are worshiping the Lord on Sundays, and we are doing this together as a family. If you don't like it, tough luck. That's just the way it is. What do you say, Adam? I mean, I know that sounds really, kind of strong, but I just think, with the coaching that we do, we get a lot of families that come to us and say they feel like they failed because they didn't say anything, and then it got so off track. There was no way to have those conversations.
Yeah, I mean, I think if it's part of your family identity and, always has been, you do have to be firm there has to be a line somewhere.
Right.
So you can't let somebody, grow up and say, okay, now I'm going to change all of you. Like I'm going away from the faith and I'm now going to push that, position onto the rest of you. And now you not only have to deal with it, but conform to my ideas. Like there comes a point where those two kind of worldviews are in conflict, and you do have to be firm at some point. The final thing I wanted to say, Deb, is don't forget that God is real. Jesus is real. He wants everybody to be with him in heaven and to have that final ultimate fulfillment. He's going to be working with and on these people through myriad others in their lives. Don't feel that you are the sole person, that if you don't do something, they'll be lost.
That is really good advice. Yeah, because a lot of other people will come into your children's view. Yes, that happened with my husband. A really strong Catholic came into his life, and he came back to the Catholic faith. So yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I hope this brought comfort to our Morning Joy listeners, and I want to hear what Keith has to say because I think we're getting some comments in the chats. So Adam, have a beautiful rest of your day. We'll send it back to Keith for the rest of Morning Joy.
All righty. Thank you so much, Debbie and Adam. And yeah, I figured it out. I'm just not going to let my children go to college. I think that'll be the easiest way to do it. I'm just kidding. But yes, this has been very helpful. I know I'm seeing a lot of the comments on social media pull up there. Thanks again, Debbie and Adam. Very powerful topic. And speaking of powerful topics, if you did not catch the Spirit World over the weekend, it was their July Open Forum. And wow, powerful calls, some real spiritual questions. And of course, you got the deep insight by Debbie and Adam. You had one listener share an emotional story about her mother. They also tackled some big questions like, can Catholics attend Mormon services? What happens when you dabbled into the occult or been invited into a new age group? So if that resonates with you, make sure to search The Spirit World or The Spirit World Podcast on any of the social media platforms. Hey, coming up next, Monsignor Charles Pope is joining us. We're going to be talking about Catholic radio and the importance of it. So stay tuned. Be right back.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.